So this time it's about Buttigieg. And he did something really, really magnanimous. He praised one of his opponents, Bernie Sanders. Oh, good for him. Except we had to kind of go to a hot tub time machine to make that happen. He did it when he was 18 and he won an award for this essay praising Bernie Sanders. Really interesting. Let's watch it together.
Back when Pete Buttigieg was a high school senior, he wrote an essay that actually won an award. The John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum actually published it, and it won Profiles in. It was the Profiles in Courage essay contest, and Buttigieg was actually the winner of it, right? So, what was this essay about? It was actually about Bernie Sanders. And recently, Jacobin found the full essay, published it on their website, and I wanted to read the full thing and see what it was about. And it was so good that I wanted to share it with you today. So just a few excerpts that I think are relevant, and we can kind of juxtapose who Buttigieg was as a smart senior in high school to what he is today. So here's a few excerpts. A new attitude has swept American politics. Candidates have discovered that it is easier to be elected by not offending anyone rather than by impressing the voters. Politicians are rushing for the center, careful not to stick their necks out on issues. Most Democrats shy away from the word liberal like a horrid accusation. Cynical candidates have developed an ability to outgrow their convictions in order to win power. Cynical citizens have given up on the election process, going to the polls at one of the lowest rates in the democratic world. Now, this essay was written in 2000, just to give you even more context. But the problems that he's bringing up are very real problems that have only gotten worse throughout the years, right? And so we know this when it comes to centrists in the Democratic Party. But what's amazing is that he's a bit of a centrist in the Democratic Party right now. I mean, he's not in Congress, but as the mayor of South Bend, and considering the positions he's taken as a presidential candidate, he comes at things from a centrist frame of mind.
I just got to repeat two quotes you said. Politicians are rushing for the center, careful not to stick their neck out on the issues. I don't know anything that defines Buttigieg's presidential campaign better than that statement. So he's like, oh, Medicare for all. No, I stuck my neck out. No, I'm rushing back to the center. He's running ads right now saying, remember guys, not too much change, okay? You don't want Medicare for all. You want to protect private insurance that makes so much profit off of denying you insurance. I'm in the center, guys. I'm in the center. And he said, cynical candidates have developed an ability to outgrow their convictions in order to win power. In the beginning of the campaign, he said he was for Medicare for all. Then he went and got a lot of donor money, and he outgrew his conviction and said, now I'm against Medicare for all. So I wish Pete Buttigieg would go back and read his own essay and listen to a younger Pete Buttigieg.
Okay, but it hasn't even gotten good yet, Cenk.
Okay.
So he also writes, it also calls into question what motivates a run for office. In many cases, apparently, only the desire to occupy it.
Oh, I mean, Jesus.
It's amazing, it's amazing.
It's like he wrote a note to himself in the future, right?
Okay, fortunately for the political process, there remain a number of committed individuals who are steadfast enough in their beliefs to run for office to benefit their fellow Americans. So who could he be talking about? All right. This is where it gets good. Such people are willing to eschew political and personal comfort and convenience because they believe they can make a difference. One outstanding and inspiring example of such integrity is the country's only independent congressman, Vermont's Bernie Sanders. Oh, I love it. He's so right. Finally, like something I can really genuinely agree with Pete Buttigieg on.
Can we make 18-year-old Pete Buttigieg Bernie Sanders vice president?
I know, right? But that's what happens. Like, anyway, I'll share my analysis in just a minute, but just one more excerpt from it. He wrote back in 2000, Sanders' courage is evident in the first word he uses to describe himself, socialist. In a country where communism is still the dirtiest of ideological dirty words, in a climate where even liberalism is considered radical and socialism is immediately and perhaps willfully confused with communism, a politician dares to call himself a socialist, he does indeed, right? He gives him credit for that. He says that it takes courage to do that. And so it's, look,
now he's criticizing him for calling himself a socialist.
Yes. So like, I've seen this happen with a lot of people, right? When you're young, when you're in high school and then in college, you're a little more idealistic. And honestly, I think that there is a level of naivete about what the real world is like. Like you think you're gonna graduate college and you have the ability to change the world, right? And I'm not trying to be a downer, but then you graduate and you realize that people suck. And
this is such an Anna.
No, but it is. But like, okay, so then you come at a crossroads in your life, right? And you have to decide, do you become one of the cynical people that crushes the dreams of idealistic young people? Or do you keep fighting, right? And so I think that, based on some of the behavior that we've seen from Pete Buttigieg, he unfortunately took the more cynical route. Whereas Bernie Sanders is like, look, this is going to, he has spent his entire career fighting for the same things. And he has been crushed by the establishment over and over again, but he kept fighting. Right? He never got discouraged. He never wallowed in despair. He never gave up. He kept going. That is not an easy thing to do. Do you know how easy it is to give up and just sell out and take the easy route? Right? There's money in it. It's way easier. There's power in it. A lot of people take the cynical route, but Bernie Sanders didn't.
In fact, in the middle of the essay, Buttigieg talks about some of Bernie's stances. Now remember, this is the year 2000, 19 years ago, okay? He says he has come under fire from various conservative religious groups because of his support for same-sex marriages. So let's note that Biden, for example, was given tremendous credit for coming out before President Obama in favor of same-sex marriages in the year 2013. Now, this is in the year 2000. In reality, Bernie Sanders was for same-sex marriages decades earlier. Never wavered, never checked poll results, said no, there's right and wrong, and we're going to protect all LGBTQ Americans, okay? So, but Buttigieg is giving him credit for that at this point. And he says his stance on gun control led to the NRA organized media campaigns against him. Now remember, some of the critiques the Democrats that are establishment types have against Bernie Sanders is he's too friendly to the NRA. Really, here's a kid writing in the year 2000 saying no, that almost cost him an election and he was against the NRA anyway. And the last one, Sanders has also shown creativity in organizing drug shopping trips to Canada for senior citizens to call attention to inflated drug prices in the United States. And still doing the same exact thing. Meanwhile, Buttigieg went from admiring that to now trying to kill Medicare for all so you'll have higher drug prices.
Right, fighting against it.
He said in another note in the middle, he said some that's okay. He said some candidates run test platforms through sample groups to see which is most likely to win before they speak out on a major issue. Exactly what Pete Buttigieg has done on the presidential campaign. So all of these idealistic thoughts from when he was a young, smart high school student admiring Bernie Sanders, all poof, gone. Now he's doing all of the things he warned against. It's actually really sad because he is a really smart guy. And I remember when he announced his campaign, we had no idea who he was and what he stood for. For all we knew, he could have been a young firebrand progressive. So I was excited to see. In fact, the only thing I had heard was rumblings that he had run for a DNC post, and some people thought he might have been a real solid progressive. And I was like, oh, that's exciting. And then he came out, and in the beginning, he did look like a progressive. So there was like a moment there where we're like, oh, this is kind of interesting, right? And then he did the polls, and he did the consultants, and then he went and raised big money, and then he turned against all of that. The way this system crushes dreams and rewards bad faith efforts rather than good faith efforts is really discouraging. But look, guys, I mean, if you want to be encouraged at the end, I just saw the polling from today, and I know it keeps changing, but right now, Bernie is surging. So he has risen in all of the national polls. He has risen in Iowa, he has risen in New Hampshire. He's currently leading in California. So I think that at the end, and Anna and I somewhat jokingly, somewhat serious, disagree about this from time to time, pessimism versus optimism. I'm an eternal optimist. And at the end of the day, I think young Pete Buttigieg might be right. And I think Americans are beginning to see, look, out of this entire field, there is one guy who's always been true, and there's one guy who's always been for us, and that's Bernie Sanders. Just ask Pete Buttigieg. He would have told you the same.